Hey everyone, my name is Rooster and welcome back to Mechabellum. In today's video, I wanted to highlight a build that's been going around for a while before today, but I think it's going to gain more popularity again after the patch that nerfed crabs or vortexes a little bit, and it's gonna be about badgers and void eyes. In this particular game, I was up against Math is Might. We started with Arclights and Steel Balls on Marksman Specialist, and I have Cost Control Specialist here with the badgers and the Void Eyes. I don't play this specialist very often, but I do actually think it's good, so I want to try and pick it up a bit more and see how it fares. Now, the nice thing here is that it allows me to go for a very aggressive tech on the Void Eyes with the immediate charge shot. So you will see me click it here. I think this tech is too cheap after it got buffed. It virtually has no downside, so even on non-cost control specialist, I will often find myself picking this on round 2 because the damage is just nice. You'll get through the earlier rounds a bit more easily, you'll be able to kill more stuff, and it sometimes forces your opponent to go for a very early counter to the Void Eyes, and you haven't really invested in them. So yeah, it just draws out a response from your opponent, and then you get to react accordingly. The game plan going into this game was to try and play the classic Void Eye carry with Aerial and Badgers with Scorching Charge and perhaps Counterfire to really stack the hit points, make sure they don't get one shot, and, well, trigger their ability so they can kill the chaff. Speaking about killing chaff, that's not really happening here. This just seems to be a problem for Badgers. They almost never seem to chaff clear appropriately on round 1 or even round 2 if they have no levels and no techs, but we will remedy that pretty soon. On round 2 here, I do have to be a little bit wary about my lack of anti-air, so I was thinking about picking up something like a Wasp. There is a Rhino Assault as well, which I was kind of tempted by, but there's a lot of spells here that are worth picking up. EMP, even Redeploy, very, very good. And even Advanced Shield Device you could pick up early on here to deny your opponent from having it. Both of us here are just going to go for the Rhino, though. And I decided to put it a little bit further forward, hoping that maybe it attacks from this diagonal and gets a tower a bit quicker. Opponent does put a crawler there. I think it will intercept my Rhino. And as for myself, I do a very similar thing. Double crawler in the back to stall the Rhino, and a Wasp pack to have some anti-air, and also to immediately cover the flank against any shenanigans. I think in this type of board, you almost always want to have early Wasps. It's just very solid, again, to prevent yourself from getting debuffed by an early flank, but also it does force out a bit of a response from your opponent usually, because leaving Wasps unattended can become a problem. As for my chaff positioning here, I don't really want to put chaff in front right now. There's this small turret that I'm pretty happy to just have shoot at the Badger, get stuck. This crawler in the middle was there to block the Chungus from instantly locking on, but all of my other crawlers, as you will see, are already basically positioned in waves. So I'm building my first wave, my second wave, my third wave, and usually in the early game you kind of want to try and build your second and third wave first, and only start thinking about your first wave when it becomes a problem, right? When your front units are getting insta-locked, immediately die, that's when you can start building, you know, those units in front of your most forward mechs. In this particular game, we're not going to be able to win. The debuff there wasn't very good for us. I think a lot of our units already died, and my Wasps won't be able to chaff clear everything here as the marksman cleans them up. So we take a little bit more damage, but we do get the unit reinforcement around here. Now, I expected my opponent to maybe go for Fang, which he does go for, because Fang can be a counter to something like, you know, a level 1 Wasp, especially if it has the second level. And for myself, I was mainly just looking to grab something I could sell later on, so it would be the Typhoon or the Saber in that sense. And I think the Saber is just more powerful, counters the Typhoon, and, you know, can have some tower pressure here with the help of a missile to try and get that debuff. I also go for double Fire Badger on the flanks with a crawler in front too. And we finally commit to Scorching Charge on the Badgers. Now, you can see my opponent immediately went for Raiden. Sensible pickup, since I do have the Void Eyes as well as the Badgers, but if you look at the Badger hit points, and do get a nice debuff there, they already have almost 7,000, which means that the Raiden can't one-shot them at equal level. It's currently debuffed, so we won't be able to see its actual attack value, but it's around 5,000, which is not enough, right, to instantly kill the Badgers, which means that they will trigger their ability. And the whole point of this build is basically to stack hit points on top of hit points to make sure you have always got that breakpoint advantage, to make sure that your Badgers don't get one-shot. And yeah, so first and second defense enhancement here are going to be quite useful. Something like counterfire later on, just for the hit point bonus, is going to be important as well. Round number 4, Orbital Javelin shows up. There is a redeploy as well. And, well, I thought that he would perhaps redeploy his Raiden in this particular instance. So I didn't want to go for the Orbital Javelin myself. Underground Threat could be decent. Haste Module is not a bad item either. I do have that Wasp level. And, well, it killed the Raiden last round. So I could just level this up and give it the item and kind of say, well, the 2 fangs you picked up are just not enough right now to be able to deal with this high-level Wasp. Plus, I mean, there's all of these Fire Badgers that are kind of coming in and, well, exploding right on top of where the fangs are. I am going to go aerial mode in this particular round because I do feel like I need to respect the air situation a little bit more. And you might say, well, isn't that going to be very expensive because you need to go aerial mode, you need to go range? But you can delay the range for quite a while as long as you only have Scorching Charge on the Badgers. Because if you compare range, we've got 75 on the Badgers and we've got 85 on the Void Eye. So they do actually sit behind your front line. Granted, your front line will just combust at some point, quite literally. But that tends to be enough to have at least, well, plenty of pressure moving in. And if you can get a tower debuff, that lack of range is really not going to be a problem immediately. It will down the line once you start thinking of counterfire, but you can really get away with this, you know, up until round 5 or round 6. I do decide to sell my Sabertooth there to be able to afford everything. I want the levels, and well, you can see that the Badgers are doing a pretty good job. It is very important here to take all of the levels that you can on your Badgers, on your Void Eyes, because, well, it's just going to help out with everything, right? The tankiness of the Badgers to make sure they don't die immediately when they get hit, and, well, the damage, and also kind of the tankiness of the Void Eyes to be able to take out more beefy units, right? Like something such as a Raiden. So finally here we start gaining some momentum. The first couple rounds didn't go our way, but now we seem to do quite well. Orbital Javelin shows up again, and this time I'm pretty happy to pick it up. Last round, with the redeploy being offered, I felt like there was a high chance that I wouldn't hit anything. Now, my opponent just moved a Crawler last round with redeploy, and I could have hit the Raiden, but I feel like that wasn't the most likely scenario. Here, I just decide to go for the Jav and hit this Raiden in the back to hopefully let my Fire Badgers get in. I will also put a Crawler in front to make sure that the Raiden doesn't immediately trigger them. And one Badger here on the right to catch this Crawler, which is the one that got redeployed last round. And you see immediately here double defense enhancement on my side as I just buy a couple more Badgers, and that's pretty much all she wrote. Just really prioritizing the stats, the levels, and that's pretty much it. A Steel Ball here gets moved from the back all the way up to the front to insta-lock this Fire Badger. I didn't think this was necessarily like that good of a move, but we will see a bigger commitment into Steel Balls a bit later. And I guess I'll talk about it a bit more in detail when that happens. But yeah, I didn't feel like I needed to do too much, or I guess the Steel Balls are already being purchased now. Or at least, well, Mathis might... He goes back on it, but he's kind of hinting at a bigger commitment later on. And Raidens are going to get ranged here. I was also quite happy to kind of use this as a setup turn to, you know, get the double defense enhancement going, because I knew I had the Javelin, and as long as it hits, right, unless my opponent redeploys the correct unit, I should have an advantage in this game and or in this particular round, and I certainly do. The right side is winning. I don't have a ton of DPS left, although I guess I do have a crawler. And on the left, we already managed to get in. With the help of the Charge Shot Void Eyes, we get that debuff. And that is a solid round 5 victory, with Massive Is Might now getting down to around 2k hit points, which, you know, this is starting to get a bit scary, perhaps. Round number 6, we get unit reinforcements. I wasn't necessarily looking for anything here. The nice thing about Badger, Void Eye, and a couple crawlers, plus maybe some wasps, is that that's a relatively self-sufficient comp. But I am going to pick up the Farseer here just to have it unlocked. And I might at some point want Photon Coating, because a common thing you will see every now and then is that people go for Raiden. Now, I don't think Raiden is that good into this comp. I think something like Scorpion is a bit more potent because it has a higher attack value, and so it has an easier time one-shotting the Badgers. Raiden will eventually outscale, but I use eventually for a reason here. Right early on, as you can see, you can often gain a lot of momentum as the Badger Void Eye player because the Badgers are too tanky to one-shot. So they still trigger, they still travel quite far up the board, and they get a lot of value as a result. So, yeah, the only problem is, you know, when they get levels and once they get to things like EMP. And to counter that, you might have to get something like a Farseer with Photon Coating to cover the Badgers, or, you know, an Overlord if you have access to that. Rhino here, by the way, on the top right, to Goomba Stomp the Raiden. And yeah, it does have enough hit points here with double defense enhancement. I think it even with a single defense enhancement has enough hit points to kill it, as they trade hit points. And yeah, well, it has more hit points than the level 1 Raiden. So we take that down quite effectively. And again, right, very tempo heavy round here. We got the Javelin last round to give us an advantage. We have the Rhino Goomba Stomp this round for a very similar purpose. Although we are slowing down a little bit, the right side I added some wasps, because I noticed that my opponent wasn't doing much about them, so just creating a few more threats here and there, and I will win. It's not that big a victory because I am playing nothing but small units, but still, every little bit of chip damage does help. Round number 7, Underground Threat here, picked up. And yeah, it's pretty much like the only thing here I think that makes sense. Photon Coating isn't terrible, but I picked up the Farseer and, you know, put it this far up. Precisely to be able to, well, click Photon Coating at some point. Although, I did not talk about this, but last round Mathis might went for the triple steel ball with range and fortified target lock. And I thought this was quite a curious play, because the thing about steel balls is that they're not particularly great at one-shotting whatever they're shooting at. They're good at killing it, but the problem with Scorching Charge is that you kind of want to one-shot it so that it just like explodes, you know, in place and doesn't travel up your board and end up, you know, exploding a Fang Pack that's halfway up or even around tower height. And yeah, steel balls aren't great at that because they just deal these little ticks of damage, although they get quite big at some point, but the Badgers will still be able to travel a little bit. And on top of that, steel ball is not great against something like Charge Shot Void Eye with levels. This is the round where I decide to range my Void Eyes, as it's round 7, and well, now I could start to see that there are some issues perhaps against the Raidens, and I was also expecting more of them. A couple of Void Eyes get added here on the right side to contest and also tower pressure a bit, because just the Fire Badger alone isn't really that great at getting, you know, a level 2 tower, even if it's able to win. And I add more wasps as well, but I think I already did that last round. We now have 3 wasps in the back, and we're just kind of like testing our opponent, like how much does he want to commit. And he ends up going for a ranged Fang, which I think is quite interesting. On the one hand, it keeps them at bay, right, from the exploding Badgers, and on the other, it also helps out with the wasps that I have. So not a bad move whatsoever. It does seem like we still have enough chaff gear here to be able to get in. On the right side, we win. We get the tower debuffs at around the same timing. I think both of the towers are level 7, or level 7. Level 2 at this point, meaning they give 7 seconds of debuff. And so yeah, 14 seconds here is more than enough for us to overwhelm. Again, not a massive amount of damage, but we're dealing about 500 at a time. And now math is down to 1,000 as we enter round number 8. Shielded Fangs get picked up immediately. Nothing interesting here. I could pick up the Mobile Beacon. It is cheap, but realistically, I don't feel like I need to beacon anything. My units kind of just move in by themselves. I'm not really trying to punish any diagonals. So, yeah, I was pretty happy to just skip there. And I'm going to go for triple Blue Badger on this particular round. And what I'm doing here is creating a second line of Badgers, basically, to replace the front ones, because I was starting to notice that the Fangs are a little bit of a problem, and my front Badgers are dying relatively quick, which is fine, but it means that I can't quite reach all the way of the back of the board, and that Fang could be annoying at some points, especially now that it has the Shielded Fang. Right side, I decided to go for an oil play, which looks like it should land, hopefully allowing me to get in and perhaps get a debuff. Again, you will see that I pick up all of the levels that I have. If perhaps you're wondering, why did I go for defense enhancement and I don't really prioritize attack enhancement as much, I do think that as a rule of thumb, defense enhancement is generally better in most scenarios. But in this particular game, because I went charge shot, my Void Eyes already have 175% extra attack, and giving them 12% more, going up to, 187, is not going to make that big a difference. Whereas going for defense enhancement and giving all of my units 15% bonus attack or bonus defense is just going to be more valuable. So that's why I prioritize that. I do eventually grab it because it does help the Badgers out a little bit, but most of my damage will just come from the Void Eyes. We managed to get in. The second line of Badgers seems to have worked quite well. And this is not quite going to be game, but it's very close. Math now down to 140. I should be able to close out the game here if I find the correct move. I also have my Javelin, right? So if I manage to hit a Raiden, that already gives me a bit of an advantage. We both decide to skip. There is a improved firepower control system. I could have bought that and, chuck it onto a Wasp. And here, the thing is that there's a lot of plays available to me. I was a bit afraid of Raiden with range and EMP because I felt like that was a natural thing for him to go for. So I decided to just sell my Farseer because it gets insta-locked by the Steel Ball and replace it with Overlord. On top of that, Overlord is just a good unit into Raiden, so I felt like this was a very solid move. Alternative options would have been, I could try to triple tech my Void Eye. I don't think it makes much sense here because there weren't that many Raidens on the board yet. I could go for, the improved firepower, as I mentioned, level my Wasps, range my Wasps, but the Fangs are a little bit scary, and yeah, like that is basically what I was thinking about. I do go for double attack enhancement here. I think another play would have been to just keep buying more Fire Badgers and really secure the chaff clearing aspect of things. I could perhaps even fit in Counterfire for that bonus HP, but this is the play I go for with the Photon, kind of trying to preempt an EMP play. More Raidens do show up, but I guess wrong on where the Raiden is, and actually that Raiden gets moved. There are two Raidens stacked here, and I could have hit two of them. Left side is moving in just fine, but there are still some Fangs left, as we can see, and they have the shield, so this is a little bit annoying, perhaps. My Overlord does get a good lock on there, and the debuff is rather timely to make sure that we take out another one, but there's still a Steel Ball pack left alive, and that will get the debuff right when I'm about to kill this Raiden. I do take it out eventually, but now the Steel Balls here decide to take my other tower, and because of that debuff, I do have a Fire Badger alive there. I don't quite manage to kill the Fangs, and I end up losing this round by a margin of, only one giant, basically 400 hit points worth of damage. And now you go to round 10, and I'm like, oh boy, is this going to suddenly turn on its head? We do get unit reinforcements, and I wasn't really looking for anything here. My opponent goes for Scorpion, which makes sense. It's a pretty decent unit, just to try and perhaps one-shot a few Fire Badgers. I decided to go for Scorpion as well, because maybe it does something against the Steel Balls. I don't think so. I don't really want to range them. I feel like I already have the DPS. Void Eye is good into Steel Ball, so I don't really need to add more. But yeah, there's nothing really worth selling in here. You know, I could just sell a Scorpion, I guess, but nothing else is really worth more. So a bit of an awkward turn. And here I'm not quite sure what to do. I decided to finally invest a bit more into my Wasps, and I buy a ton more because my opponent doesn't really have a great response into it. I mean, sure, he does have the Fangs, but I felt like, you know, if the Wasps are level 2, they can probably contest the Fangs, and if anything, help out with the Raidens that are starting to get in the way a little bit. More Raidens show up, and the second tech chain now gets picked up. Of course, EMP won't be a thing now, as I already, you know, pre-teched Photon. I don't think Photon was a bad move, because it does add to the tankiness of the Badgers as well, and that's kind of one of the main themes of this whole comp. Top left, we go for a Goomba Stomp again, although one Steel Ball does manage to survive. We managed to defend the Rhino that drops in the back of our board, and yeah, my entire front line is on fire here, although that is just my own doing, of course. But as we can see, there are no Fire Badgers left, so I'm starting to kind of get stuck here. I do take out a couple of Raidens on the left. It seems like we might be able to get to the tower at some point, but in the meantime, there are these late Fangs arriving from the right, and getting through those is gonna be a tall task. In fact, I don't think it's gonna be possible. My Overlord, in the meantime, is getting stuck on a lone Steel Ball as it misses it twice. And yeah, suddenly I'm down to 1500 when I was up by almost 4000 hit points at one point in this game. Round number 11, deployment module shows up. I did leave 2 of the Scorpions in the middle of the board, by the way. I just didn't really know what to do with them, and to be frank, I forgot about them because I sold one of them. But, you know, that is a mistake, but I have tried this particular round again, and it doesn't really make much of a difference. The Scorpions aren't going to change much, so yeah, I should have moved them, but it's definitely not the biggest thing in that round. Here, though, I do remember to move one of them with the deployment module. I sell the second one, and I decide to go for counterfire on my Fire Badgers on round 11. Arguably a little late. I do think I should have probably picked that up a little bit earlier, just to guarantee the bonus hit points. And I decide to try out the electromagnetic armor on my Void Eyes. I run this mainly to counter things like range AA Mustang, but sometimes it can be useful against other stuff as well. Oh, I decide to go back on it, I guess. Am I going to click it? I'm not sure. I wasn't convinced that it would do that much. Looks like I am just going to backtrack on that idea. My main problem was that I didn't think the Raidens would end up hitting, and EMP on Wasp is just cheaper, so I decided to go for that instead. Grab more Overlords to try and, you know, add some beefiness to the air situation, and also, again, Overlord is not bad into Raiden, although they are very high level at this point. The flanks are just kind of trading. I do kill a little bit of chaff, but not a ton. And, well, can we get in right now? The Fire Badgers, a lot of them dying early. Again, I think most of them have already gone down at this point. This one about to trigger, but it was already almost down to half, and it will get one-shot by level 3 Raiden. And yeah, you can see that this is not going to go anywhere on round 11, and I will actually end up losing this game with Mathis Might pulling a crazy comeback there. And yeah, sadly, I did not find the correct move. Now, round 11 here is just lost. I tried anything, but it just doesn't work. You can't really change much. The problem really was more so, I think, on round 9. That's when I had all of the momentum. I had my Javelin back off cooldown, and I think this is the particular round that I should be looking to win. Now, what I went for is the Photon Overlord, which I don't think is a bad play, because it adds tankiness to the Fire Badgers, and I do think it is fair to try and kind of pre-counter electromagnetic shot. However, there is other stuff I could do. Now, I could, of course, try and hit a better Javelin, but I think that's, you know, that's hindsight. That's not always going to happen. My opponent just, you know, guessed correctly, moved the correct thing. So I'm going to put the Javelin in the same spot I did, and we're going to try and win this round the normal way. And one of the things I could just do, and one of the things that's kind of just a general theme in Mechabellum, is, you know, you don't always need to diversify your board. It can just be better sometimes to build more of the same unit. And so that's exactly what we're going to try here. I'm going to build a third line of fire badgers, right? We have these over here as the first one. We have these ones, the second one, and now we add this as the third. And I'm going to go for counter fire as well. And that's pretty much our round. Triple fire badger, more of the same stuff, right? We have badgers and void eyes. That's our comp. So let's just stick to that. And the idea here is that the problem I was starting to have even before this round was dealing with these late fangs. So buying more fire badgers to arrive a little bit later to be able to kill those is a perfectly sensible thing. In fact, I already did it once before by building the second line of badgers. So why not build a third? I could missile here to try and hit this this steel ball pack, but let's just say that I don't do that and I go for something like this to try and, you know, counter the oh, the rhino is next round. I thought it was maybe this round, but let's put a missile here, or I guess here, to counter the flank in case something would show up there, and really see how much this play ends up doing. So with the javelin, we actually do manage to kill the steel balls, and my fire badgers, I think, do a little bit better. They do get triggered at this point. But as you can see, the third wave of fire badgers does make a massive difference, right? Look at how many are still alive, and how easily we managed to get into that tower. We get a good debuff. We start to move across the field. We take out the rest of the Raidens, and that is just a convincing round win. I tried a bunch of other things. I tried, you know, getting a better javelin, ranging the wasps, I think. But in the end, this is just the most solid and most convincing round victory I can get. And I think it makes perfect sense as well. It is something that I was kind of aware of during the game, like one about the late shielded fangs. And it did become a problem on this round. Again, it was extremely close, within 400 hit points difference. And there are ways to win just by moving stuff around slightly, having a different javelin with the play I went for. But it's just not convincing. And I think this is, right? Try to counter the problems that you see or the ones that you expect. And I think the biggest here was I was expecting that I would start to get problems with my chaff clear. So building a third wave of fire badgers would have been the correct move. Either way, I think that this game does showcase the potential of this comp. It's never really gone away, but it has gotten slightly better because of the buff to charge shot. And yeah, this does well even into things that you would expect to be a counter, right? This was very early Raiden, but we were crushing right up until this round. And then at some point you get outscaled, but if you play it correctly, you can just close things out and win. Anyway, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a thumbs up. Let me know down in the comments below what you think about this comp. Is it something that, you know, you've been playing for a while, or did you learn something? Be sure to let me know. If you want to stay up to date with my latest content, please consider subscribing. And if you want to see me play live, check me out on Twitch. With that being said, take care, guys, and see you in the next video. Bye-bye.